Welcome back to the Whole Nine Yards here. Drew Pien and Brandon Kokorian on a Tuesday evening, 7:39 Eastern. Brandon, how's it going?
Pretty good. I did some quick math about our predictions and our records. We'll get into that after the first topic, but I feel pretty good because of the quick math that I was doing.
Yeah, I mean, is it over? Is it checkmate or at least according
From
to your
what
math?
from my math, I think it is. Now we'll when we get to it, I guess we could get a little more official on that. But in my quick math, I think it is official. Yes.
Okay, interesting. As you can see, you're actually looking at something a little bit different. The first topic's Antonio Brown. I think everybody already knows what happened. I'll give a quick recap for anybody who doesn't. As you can see on the screen, actually, you can currently see this is just a screenshot of AB running off the field. He's just him doing his peace sign. He took his jersey off, took his shoulder pads off, shirtless, takes off his clothes, rips it off in an argument with, not necessarily an argument, but teammates trying to calm him down. He rips off his clothes, runs off the field, throws his clothes into the Jets fans, does the peace sign, runs out. That's what you're seeing right now. But what are your first reactions from this? Because this is truly just a very unique situation, and this is the first time I think we've ever seen anything like this, at least in the NFL.
I mean, for sure. I mean, people were comparing it to the Vontae Davis situation, which was like 2016, 2017, but that was at halftime.
That was like
And he
2019, I thought maybe, but
maybe even was. I don't even know. But that was at halftime of a game, so it was in the locker room, and it wasn't on the field. And I mean, Vontae Davis used. I mean, it was pretty good before, but again, it's not like that profile of a player. But honestly, it's been a couple of days, so I more so view this as. I mean, it's crazy the situation that happened, but I think this hurts the Bucks' chances by a lot. I think this almost doesn't take them out of the Super Bowl for sure. I mean, obviously, especially with Dallas's loss, they're now probably going to be the 2 seed, so that for sure helps. But I think they're going to be. It's going to be a lot tougher for them to get back to the Super Bowl because we both said it that AB had to fill that role of Godwin. And you saw in the Panthers game, he had 15 targets, 10 catches, 100 yards, a touchdown. So he clearly looked like he was he had to play like at least 80, 90% of what he was in the past. And he, was certainly looking like that. So I look at it more from a Bucks perspective, and I don't know who they have to replace him. I mean, again, you look at Mike Evans, like I said last week, from the 20 to the 20, he doesn't give you much. From the red zone, he gives you a lot, but again, you have to get to the red zone. Gronk hasn't looked great the last couple of weeks. He's been injured as well. What are the receivers do they have? I mean, Scotty Miller doesn't really play that much. Tyler Johnson, he doesn't really do anything anyways. So I really see this as a real negative for their team. Now for AB, I guess personally, I mean, I would just look back at the perfect hit from, what was that, 2015, 2016, whatever. I think it was 2015 that game was against the Bengals. I think all of his problems started from there, and I feel like that's probably what most people would say. But it's still shocking anyways, even though like you can somewhat expect him to do something like this, but you would never expect it to be like that. I mean, literally during the middle of a play in the game, he's taking his jersey off, throwing it to the side, running off the field. Like that. I mean, that was definitely crazy to see. I was watching on Red Zone, and like it didn't even seem real when they cut live to that game, and you just saw him running across the field or whatever.
so I'm assuming you're out on AB's career. Like if I
Oh, I
asked,
mean, if a team were to sign him, I think that'd be a crazy sign. Like there's so much baggage, and I feel like the only guy he works well with is Brady, and now as we see, it didn't even really work out there. So
let's say Antonio Brown had retired, like let's say he had been cut after the fact. Let's just say he retired after the Super Bowl last year. Would he be a Hall of Famer in your eyes?
yeah, I mean, I would say yeah. I mean, I don't have his exact like awards and everything pulled up,
Sure.
but I
No, but
mean,
this is just a gut. This is like a gut check or whatever. Not
yeah,
necessarily your firm opinion, but first impression. Like you have him as a Hall of Famer. Okay. Do you have
I would say yeah.
do you have let's say his career's done now? Is he a Hall of Famer to you right now or no?
Uh, it's gonna be tough. I mean, like the one thing I'll say is that even though he like left the team or whatever, did that stuff, he never did anything to the media. I guess like he never. This wasn't like a direct shot at the media, so maybe that helps him with the Hall of Fame case. Because like, I mean, now you could look at it and be like, he just quit on his team, which I think would play a huge factor. So I think there's probably still maybe a little bit of a chance, but again, we'd have to see. I mean, I guess technically, like I said, I don't think he's going to get picked up. So you could probably start from this year, 5 years until he's eligible. I guess we'll see, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got in. But I could see people using the Raiders situation, hit some off the field issues as well. So I could definitely, and also the fake, vax card, all that stuff. So I think there's definitely a lot of issues that you could play into not having him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, so if for the first question I asked, I would not have had him as a Hall of Famer had he retired after the Super Bowl last year, aka get rid of the fake vax, get rid of this situation. I would not have had him as a Hall of
Really?
Famer. I would not know. I'm on the stricter side of Hall of Fame. So like there are probably people that 80 to 85% of people would have in the Hall of Fame that I may not. So but
The only thing I'll say to that is that he made the all 2010s team, and there's never been a guy who's never made a decade team that's never been in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, cool, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of just all the baggage, and I'm not a fan of wide receivers with like all the baggage. I mean, OBJ is a much lesser version of AB, but I don't love T.O. I don't think I'd have T.O. in my Hall of Fame. And I didn't get to watch all of T.O.'s career, especially the earlier parts. I more got the, early 30s T.O. probably. But I still wouldn't have had him as a Hall of Famer. Randy Moss, I mean, obviously I would. But had Randy Moss not had the trip to the Patriots, maybe that's a different conversation. Because ultimately, had his career ended with the Raiders, he would have been seen as the type of guy, maybe similar to AB, that bunch of production, bunch of flashy plays, top end receiver. Maybe, I guess Randy Moss is more of a God given talent than AB, but it would have never really turned into anything. And I know he never won a Super Bowl necessarily, but I think that revitalization of his career was big. But yeah, I wouldn't have had AB as a Hall of Famer. I don't rule him out though to make the Hall of Fame. At least this version of the Hall of Fame and that we have in real life, not necessarily my personal Hall of Fame, because like you said, it's a 5-year gap, between retiring and that. I could see him. Listen, it's a hot take right now, but I mean, I could easily see AB. Let's just say, in a couple weeks or maybe a couple months, because I mean, if we've seen his Instagram post or anything like that. I don't know. He's claimed to be like a super gremlin or something like that. I don't even know what it was. It was some just like,
Yeah.
he went to like a Brooklyn Nets Grizzlies game, I think it was, right?
Last night.
Yeah, it was front court there, but I don't know what's going on with him. He's not just going to randomly come to the realization that he's messed up tomorrow. So it'll probably take a couple months, but let's say he does that. He gets some actual help instead of just like whatever, he got back in those court cases or whatever. That was like just, mandated therapy, but maybe he didn't really care about it. Let's say he gets actual help and then comes back and maybe gets with an NFL team and can not play like a top receiver, but I don't know. I mean, 80%, 75% of what he was on the Bucks, which he wasn't all that on the Bucks, but if he can be like good, maybe like a number 2 or a number 3 receiver, I mean, I think that actually helps his case, because I think that gives him like the little Cinderella narrative that I think, helps a guy like this, because there are going to be people that are going to not want him in the Hall of Fame solely because of the fake vax card and because of what he did this past Sunday. And if you can kind of give him that narrative to wrap up his career and, end it on a good note, maybe that gives him a better chance. But to me, I'm pretty strict on my receivers in my Hall of Fame, so I probably wouldn't have him in. But as far as football-wise, as we were talking, as you initially brought up, I would agree. I think this hurts the Bucs' chances. If we go through post 2004, all of the teams that Brady has been to the Super Bowl on, if he makes a Super Bowl this year, it'll probably be his weakest wide receiver core ever. Maybe his second weakest. I don't know. But I mean, 2007, obviously Moss Walker. 2011, Gronk, Hernandez, Welker. I mean, that was a pretty good, solid offense. 2014, you had Gronk, you had Edelman, which I think a prime Gronk and a prime Edelman is better than what you'd have minus AB, Godwin, all that. 2016, this is when you kind of start to debate, is you had Martellus Bennett, you had Julian Edelman, and you had like James White.
Amendola, right?
Amendola as well. I think I would take the 2016 with the chemistry over what you have now. But I think that's where you start to get close. But this would probably be, and I think especially when you consider chemistry because of all the injuries, the worst receiving core Brady has ever brought to the Super Bowl. I'm not saying
Maybe
it's the worst team.
2018?
2018, I think it's debatable. Edelman was still pretty good. Maybe not prime Edelman, but Gronk was probably about the same as he is now. Probably maybe even slightly worse. I think that's the real debate is 2018. But
Yeah.
that was a yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know if this team would be the worst team he's ever brought to a Super Bowl or been to a Super Bowl with, but I think that would be 2011 in my mind. But yeah, this would be it's an uphill battle for a guy who's 43 years old. But the reason I'm not going to rule him out, just like I mean, you're not going to rule him out, but the reason I'm not going to rule him out, like others may, is if Brady truly is a tier one quarterback. If we're making a quarterback tier list, I think right now most people have Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers as their tier one or their elite of the elite, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe Wilson's in there if he's right, but right now he's not. So if he is that tier, I think he should be able to bring this team to a Super Bowl. And I'm not saying he has to stay in that tier, but I'm just you know I think he should be as just. I don't think he should get blown out by the Packers and be like, well, you lost these guys, you lost this. Like, you know, if the defense plays just okay enough, then as long as it's not awful, which it could be, but I think he should be really competitive with the Packers, even in Lambeau. I don't think he should get blown up by any team. I think any game in the playoffs should be down to the wire. So even in the Super Bowl. So
Yeah, and right now they're the 3 seed because the Rams have tiebreaker, but the Rams play the Niners, which is tougher than the Bucks playing the Panthers. So there's still a chance that they could get the 2 seed, which obviously helps. You're rather playing Philadelphia or New Orleans. Most likely, I guess there's a possible chance it could be San Francisco, but I think San Francisco is rather the 6 seed or they're just out of the playoffs. So obviously that's a much easier matchup than playing again maybe a San Francisco, maybe Phil. I guess it could be Philadelphia, but obviously you're looking at San Francisco there. But yeah, I just it's just it's something you just didn't expect to happen. Now, if it's an injury or something, that's obviously different. But it's just whatever this was, that's gonna severely hurt their chances. Now, maybe round one it doesn't, but round two, if you're rather playing the Rams, Cowboys, and then round three, if you're playing the Packers, most likely, it's going to hurt. You need weapons on the outside. The defense isn't as good as it was last year. They're also dealing with injuries too. So you can't really rely on that really good defense to complement the offense. You kind of need both of them, but it seems like right now you need your offense more. And again, no Fournette. Evans is injured, and again, he's not super effective in the middle of the field. No Godwin. Gronk's injured and not as effective anymore. And then no Brown. So I think they have serious questions. And again, would I rule them out for the Super Bowl? No. I've never not count on Brady to lead a team to a Super Bowl or at least have a really good chance of getting to a Super Bowl. But it makes it a lot tougher, and it's going to be tough because Green Bay right now I don't know how much confidence I have in them, but I do know that they have all their weapons and they're only going to get healthier. With Alexander is going to come back at corner, so it's going to make their secondary better. I think they have Bakhtiari. I think should be back for the playoffs. I think they said at least a couple of those games. So they're only going to get healthier there, and obviously they have the chemistry. And Rodgers, is probably going to win MVP again. So it's going to be tough for them to try and get back there, though.
everything's kind of going for the Packers, but I feel like that's kind of almost every year. Is like the Packers are kind of the favorite. That's not like they're not a dominant favorite, but they're a favorite, and then they end up losing in the conference championship. So I don't know. I mean, we're not making any official predictions on what we think is going to happen in the playoffs yet, but I probably won't go Packers. Although, I mean, I like them. I think they're a solid team, but to me, they're like, I don't see why they're that much different than last year's Packers. Maybe they're just not a Bucks this year. Like a
Yeah, I
true
think
Bucks, but
I think that's the reason why is that there's not really another team that's probably on their level right now. If the Bucks were healthy, I think for sure, but they're not, so you can't say they are. But yeah, they're similar to last year's team, where like again the last couple of weeks, this week, this last week is kind of an exception. There's no Kirk Cousins, but they easily could have lost that Browns game that they played. They played a lot closer games than they should have. The Ravens game was obviously really close where they blew that. So definitely not dominant, but out of the other teams in the NFC, health wise, COVID wise, just chemistry wise, everything like that, I think they're for sure the favorites, obviously. But yeah, I guess we'll see when the playoffs start.
yeah. I guess other teams. I know you do the Cowboys episode every week. If you want to hear specifics on Cowboys, Clips channel link in bio. But I do want to talk about the Cowboys Cardinals game because I think that has national relevancy. Cardinals beat the Cowboys 25-22. Dak doesn't look great, but if you want to hear about the performance of Dak and everything else, maybe that's in the Clips channel. This has huge seeding implications though, because almost assuredly now the Cowboys are going to be the 4th seed, I want to say.
It's unless both the Bucks and the Rams lose and we win.
And the difference between the 4 seed and the 2 seed in the NFC to me is massive because you go from, had you won this game, you're probably playing like Philadelphia, or you're probably playing like, I don't know, Minnesota or New Orleans or something like that, to playing. I mean, now you're probably going to play either the Cardinals or the Rams, probably the Cardinals.
Probably.
I mean, you just lost to the Cardinals at home, so I'm not saying you're going to lose to the Cardinals at home in the playoffs, but to me, I'm going to have, when we get to our official playoff predictions, I'm going to have a really hard time picking a team that has to play three, or most likely has to play three, just, super relevant teams. To me, I'm
Yep.
almost assuredly going to go with, at least in one of the brackets, either AFC or NFC, a 1 or 2 seed, because even though the 2 seed doesn't get the bye, this 2 seed still gets the 7 seed, which it's looking like is going to be a weak team in both conferences. Maybe the AFC, it's not as weak as the NFC, but probably looking at two weaker teams. I mean, I like the Cowboys, and had they been the 2 seed, I think I probably have them in the conference championship, or at least I have them doing well. I don't know if I can pick them to. I can maybe pick them to win the wild card. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pick them to, let's say, beat the Cardinals, then go beat the Green Bay and Lambeau, and then go beat, maybe it's the Rams in LA. I mean, that's a tough road. And it's going to
Yeah,
be
I
something like that. It's going to be, maybe that's the worst possible version, but it's either like something like that, or like, Arizona, Tampa, LA or something. So,
I mean, that's why the loss was just huge because one, it could have been, Tampa almost lost to the Jets, which right now, I guess I'm glad they didn't because it kills that we lost. But like they almost lost, the Rams almost lost. But you lose to the Cardinals, so you lose the 2 seed. Again, you can't even get it because even if the Rams and Bucks lose, unless the Cardinals also lose, they play Seattle. Then there is a chance because and then you'd win. You'd have 12 wins and you have the tiebreaker over the Rams and Bucks. But if the Cardinals win, then you lose the tiebreaker to them. Obviously, it just the only way they can get the 2 seed is if like all three teams lose, and that's probably just not going to happen. So, yeah, they're the 4 seed. They have to play the best team out of the wild card teams. Then you have to go to Green Bay, which I mean, I wouldn't even pick them in that game unless an injury happens. So yeah, it's almost impossible for them to get to the NFC Championship unless Dak plays better. And I'll for sure talk about it when I do my episode. But yeah, I mean, last week was clearly just you're playing a team on a short week with COVID issues, injuries, and you just demolish them at home. And again, the offense did look great, but I mean, you just saw that game last week. And the one thing I'll say, just like kind of Cowboys thing was the Cardinals were playing with all backups in their secondaries, and they didn't even try to test them. I mean, you have CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and look, they've been good this year, not great, but I mean, you're probably winning a route with either of those guys on the outside or wherever, and they didn't even try to test any of the backup corners. So that I think that's just a game plan mistake, and I think that's the problem with the offense is that it's just not there like it was the first couple weeks, and it just somehow hasn't got there. So it's just a huge loss. You lost your destiny. You lost the ability to control your own destiny and to get an easy first round matchup. And now you most likely are playing the Cardinals, which, as we just saw, it's going to be hard to stop Kyler Murray. So it's clearly not ideal. And yeah, they're probably looking at if they even make it out of the first round, they're probably looking at a loss in the second round.
I will say from that game, to get outcoached by Cliff Kingsbury is something you almost have to try to do. I mean, I hate to be a hater, but my
Well,
take of, let's just say I were to have won this predictions thing. I mean, I think my Mike McCarthy take was a solid. I mean, last year I think I'm on the record for saying that I arguably would have just fired him after 1 season. I'd have to go back
well,
and check,
I
but
mean, I said that was terrible because COVID, your quarterback gets injured. It's impossible. I mean, it's just
I
impossible.
mean,
But
hindsight, I
But
think
at the
it's.
same time, I mean, I mean, are you viewing the timeout that he had to take as him being out coached because he got tricked into that?
I mean, yeah, but I'm just viewing it as like there's just. I don't think there's really that much of an excuse to get to an area like that and not have a timeout in general. I mean,
Well, I mean, you had to, well, one the deep there was 5 minutes left when Arizona got the ball back after we made it a 3 point game. So we had more chances to stop them on defense. That's not McCarthy. That's just the defense not being able to stop them. So they ran it down to I think there was like 3 minutes left when we had to start taking the timeouts because they did get a first down. And then you look at the 2 minute warning, you have two timeouts. So I can't blame him for using those timeouts. And again, the one timeout he used, I mean, Murray's on the field, so like, what you don't have? They were thinking field goal, which again they trotted out Prater, and I heard this, and I don't think I think the refs it's really their mistake. If you make a sub, like because they did bring Prater in, that's a sub, then you have to allow the defense to sub, and they didn't allow our defense to sub. So I think that's really a ref's mistake, in my opinion. Again, that's what I heard, and that's what I've seen people write. So assuming that is correct, then that's the ref's fault, and they should have called timeout or allowed us to sub because we had a field goal block unit in. We had a couple special teamers in there, so no one knew what to do. So I don't blame him for that. I view that as the ref's mistake if that report was true, which I believe it is because Prater was on the field. But again, the fumble that happened, I mean, it was a fumble. I mean, good. If they were to review that, I don't know if they're overturning it, even though I think it was a fumble. But I really blame that the last drive on the defense. You have 5 minutes to stop them from getting one first down, and you couldn't do it. So I really blame that on the defense. Not the game, but that series.
Yeah, no, I'm not going as far to say I blame McCarthy for this game entirely, but I will say I think he got outcoached by Cliff Kingsbury still. Maybe not even just that mistake, but just across the entire game. As a team that's been declining, I think that's a game you just have to win, and just the seeding implications to make this Super Bowl as a 4 seed with not an elite quarterback, even though Dak's good, and probably a subpar head coach. That's just too many hills to climb there. Or, you've just dug the hole too deep, I think. So I don't know.
No, I mean, I would agree with that, obviously. I mean, look, being the 4 seed's the worst seed to be. That's why when, as we stay tied with the Rams and the Bucks, or if it was the Cardinals or whatever, like we would be the 2 seed, or if anything, the 3 seed. I mean, that's fine too. So being the 4 seed was the worst possible situation, and that's what they put themselves in. So all you can do is just win on Saturday, and maybe hope that. I mean, the Jets almost beat the Bucks, so maybe the Panthers could beat them. I doubt it, but maybe. Maybe you get some luck in there. So who knows? But yeah, again, they put themselves in this situation. So you can only blame yourselves for this. As long as you won this game, it wouldn't have mattered. So yeah, they can only blame themselves.
Yeah, but moving on to AFC seeding implications or whatever. Chiefs Bengals, probably the game of the week, I would assume. I mean, I haven't taken a lot of thought into it, but I'm going to assume that's the game of the week. Chiefs Bengals, Bengals pulling out the upset. They were like 5.5 point dogs. You ended up going with Kansas City. You didn't hit on it, but according to your math, it's checkmate anyways. But anyways, the Chiefs were looking like the 1 seed. They were going to have a bye, and they lose this game to the Bengals. It took a all-time historic performance from Jamar Chase. It took, barring the 1 week where Burrow threw for 530 yards, a career day from Burrow. It took a lot, but anyways, the Bengals end up pulling the dub, and now the Chiefs are going from the 1 seed to, unless Houston beats the Titans, they are going to be the 2 seed, which I think is probably going to happen. So we'll assume they're the 2 seed, which means they go from getting a bye to potentially having to play. Listen, I'm not going to pick the 7 seed most likely over the Chiefs, but just having to play another one of those games, I think is very unfortunate for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and especially when they put themselves in that spot where you had the 1 game advantage. Obviously, you knew you couldn't be tied with the Titans because they beat you earlier in the year. So, yeah, this was not a good. Again, they started this game off so well. I think they had 28 points in the first half. And if you look at the second half, they only had the ball 3 times, where they went 6 plays, 26 yards, 6 plays, 34 yards, and then they went 11 plays, 52 yards for a field goal. But the Bengals went touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal, and obviously that last one there at the 1 yard line for what seemed like was for like 5 minutes. So they got outplayed the second half. Again, the first half, they were great. They were going up and down the field scoring. They were up 14 at multiple points in this game. And I thought, I mean, that's kind of what I thought. There would be a lot of scoring in this game, but the Chiefs would always have at least a comfortable lead, whether it's a touchdown, 10-point lead. They'd always be up. And then again, that 5 point, I picked that just thinking they'd always be up by a touchdown or 10 points. But the second half, yeah, their offense just stalled. I don't exactly know the reason. I mean, you had the big play to Hill. I don't know if that was at the end of the first half or exactly when that was, but He just dropped it. I mean, I know the guy made a play, but it was in his hands, and he had it for a second. If you make that play, you're at least getting three. You're probably getting seven, to be honest. So definitely had missed opportunities, and this was definitely, yeah, again, not a game that you could afford to lose because now you're the 2 seed, and again, they're going to play. Right now it'd be LA, it could be the Raiders, whoever. They're probably winning that game, but yeah, you just lose out on a week of rest to get guys back, and also you'd play right now. It would be the winner of Buffalo, New England. So definitely, it's just a huge loss for them when looking at the seeding. And to think that Tennessee is going to be a 1 seed is it's kind of crazy, but it just shows that you'd rather bet on the field in the AFC, not the 1 seed.
I mean, I will say if the Titans do get the 1 seed, I think it makes it hard not to have Vrabel as the coach of the year. I mean, that team's it's good, but to bring a team that pretty much had an injured Julio the whole year, an injured AJ Brown half the season, no Derrick Henry pretty much half the season, to bring that team to the 1 seed, I mean that's crazy. To even bring that team to the division victory, I think is impressive. But to bring that team to the 1 seed, to beat the Chiefs, well, not yeah, I mean, to be ahead of the Chiefs, to be ahead of all these teams, ahead of the Bills. I mean, to me, Vrabel would be my coach of the year, I think. And I don't love the Titans. Like I may probably picking them to lose in the divisional round, most likely, depending on the matchup. But still, I mean, that's an amazing job by Vrabel, in my opinion. One thing, do you remember? And I think I remember, but do you by chance remember the order that you had the AFC North at the beginning of the year? Because we picked our division winners. I went with Baltimore. You went with Cleveland.
I was gonna say I probably picked the Browns.
And you had Ravens second, I want to say, right?
Most likely at Ravens
And then
second.
Steelers, and then Bengals, right?
Uh, Most likely. But I feel like I still had the Bengals probably around where the Steelers were. But yeah, definitely not where they are now, though.
Maybe this isn't popular opinion, but a popular opinion was the order of Browns, Ravens, Steelers, Bengals.
Yeah, I would say
And
so.
it finished in the exact opposite. It was Bengals first, then Steelers, then Ravens, then Browns. I know it's not officially set in stone right now, but that's probably how it's going to end up finishing. Or, effectively that's how it's finished out, with the Bengals as the first team, Steelers second, Ravens third, Browns fourth. One of the what people thought initially going in was going to be a very competitive and, maybe not, barring the NFC West, the best division in football, relatively underwhelming division. A lot of it is injuries, right? I mean, the Steelers dealt with their fair share. The Ravens, killed with injuries. Browns, I mean, dysfunction and injuries, I guess you want to call it that. But
COVID also that killed them.
yeah,
To be
COVID
fair.
killed them as well. Yeah, I what a failure of a season by the Browns, by the way.
And I
Came,
mean, the healthiest team, like you said, the healthiest team in that division won out. I mean, Chase is healthy, Burrow's healthy. That's obviously the biggest question for them. I
Mixon.
don't think they've really had like a huge, yeah, Mixon. They haven't really had like a huge injury. So exactly, the healthiest team, which is usually what it is, won out, and yeah, it was the Bengals. So it was pretty surprising.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Like, I wasn't going to talk about this, but to go from beating the Steelers in the playoffs last year and almost beating out the Chiefs to being 7-9 and missing out in the playoffs, it's a failure of a season, just
I
flat
mean, I
out.
can only imagine how Joey feels.
I'm happy about it, to be honest, but
Well,
I
I
hope
mean,
he
last night
does.
was I didn't even watch that entire game. I went to the Rangers game, but I came back for probably like a little bit of the fourth quarter, and I mean, it was just ugly. I mean, I saw the stats: 9 sacks. Baker missed like 20 throws or whatever his completion was. Got picked twice. I mean, that last one was kind of dumb, but that's just the way the night was going. But 9 sacks. I mean, Watt, he locked up Defensive Player of the Year with that performance. And he's only played. I think he's only played in 15 games. He hasn't even played or 14 games. I think he's missed a couple of games and he has 21 and a half sacks. So I mean, that's just really impressive because, I don't know if you saw the Cooper Cup statement today, but he was like, I don't think if I break those records for receiving, I don't think they should count for like the all-time records because I had 17 games to do it. Not obviously the other guys had 16 games, but I mean, Watt, he's technically not even going to do it in like 16 games. It may even be like 15 games. So, I mean, that's just crazy to think that he could have the sack record in less than 16 games.
Yeah, I mean, I think the sack record is very attainable. Yeah, no, I would agree that TJ Watt is pretty much locked up Depoy. It's crazy. I mean, I mean, I know this doesn't mean anything, but you would have assumed that the brother of like a 3-time defensive player of the year, most dominant defensive player since like arguably Lawrence Taylor. His brother is in the draft. You would assume he's higher than like a second rounder, but listen, I mean, I'm not a scout, but
Well, the Cowboys had the chance to draft him, and they drafted Taco Charlton from Michigan, and obviously that didn't work out. So definitely hurts. But yeah, I mean he's a 3-4 guy anyway, so I don't think it would have worked on our defense. But it would have been nice to have.
I mean, I don't even know if it matters. Like, I feel like if you get a guy like T.J. Watt, you
Well,
find
no,
a way,
obviously it wouldn't have mattered, but maybe he's not. I mean, again, because he was a second round guy, so he obviously wasn't the highest touted guy. So I'm not saying it wouldn't have worked out, but I think a scheme does help a certain player. I mean, you put like a Von Miller in a 4-3 defense, he's good for sure, but is he still the Von Miller from when he got drafted, when he was in a 3-4 defense? I think it's a little bit different. I'm not saying they wouldn't be as good, but maybe not as dominant.
No, I 100% agree with that. I was more so thinking the angle of you're in a 4-3, you draft TJ Watt, you see his potential, and then you realize, okay, maybe it's time to fire a defensive coordinator or make him, switch up the game plan because there's no, we might as well make the swap now. But yeah, anyways, but that's kind of the AFC game and the seeding implications.
Well,
there's a lot of seeding stuff. I don't know if you want
to. I was going to say another big AFC seeding game was the Raiders-Colts game. I mean, that was huge.
Yeah.
Not as big as, I guess, Chiefs-Bengals, but, I mean, the Colts look like, I mean, that's a game they probably should win. And again, it's the reason I picked the Raiders. They always play one-score games. They're always in the game. And honestly, and you would probably agree, I mean, I trust Carr more than Wentz. So, and that's kind of what happened. Carr was better than Wentz in this game. Surprise victory, but now the Raiders have a chance to make the playoffs. And the Colts, just a huge loss. Now they're the 6th seed. 9-7. I think they could even technically drop maybe a spot. I think potentially if they were to lose at Jacksonville, which probably isn't likely, but you never know what could happen. And again, they could have maybe potentially been the 5 seed because obviously they beat New England and they would have had the same record had they won this game. So it's just a huge implication for the Colts because now they got to play Cincy, which I mean, I think that's a tough matchup. I think that's a tough matchup for Indianapolis, but Cincy can pass. And unless, like I said, if the Colts aren't up 10-0, they're going to have problems scoring the ball because you're trusting Wentz and not Taylor.
Yeah. So as far as the AFC, I would agree. I trust Carr over Wentz. As long as the Colts beat Jacksonville, they're in. But this is going to be the most exciting, one of the most exciting regular season games of the whole year. It's going to be Chargers at Las Vegas because that's a play-in. That's a playoff game. That is literally just a playoff game. It's It's the wild card junior or whatever. I don't know. It's similar to like the play-in
basically
game
game 1-6. It's basically game 163 is what it is. When you have just 2 teams and whoever wins the game makes the wild card or whatever. So
I think it's going to be interesting. By the way, I mean, assuming the Chiefs are the 2 seed, I don't think it matters. But
no.
But I mean, on the other hand, they're both division rivals of the Chiefs, aka I think there's more room for variables in the equation. If this was the Steelers, I mean, maybe the Steelers are just worse than the Raiders and the Chargers. But even if the Steelers were like equal skill to the Raiders and Chargers, not playing each other twice a year and having that rivalry, I think actually takes away from the experience of a 2 versus 7 seed. The Raiders always other than the game they just played, typically it's very close, right? I mean, I think last year they upset them. It's typically very close games. And the Chargers, I mean, Herbert's been one of the best quarterbacks to face Mahomes. He's probably gotten the better of that matchup. So, I mean, I'm not telling you I'd pick the Chargers or the Raiders, but that will make for an exciting matchup, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the previous years, the Raiders and Chiefs have always had good matchups. This year, they've been outscored by 66 points. But you're right. The other years, it always seems like the Raiders do beat the Chiefs at least once a year. It seems like. But the Chargers, I think the Chargers have would have a better matchup. And again, I'd pick the Chiefs, but I mean, they lost in overtime to them, and then they beat them earlier in the year. So obviously, they do play them well. But yeah, I mean, the Chiefs would still win that game. But it's going to be exciting. I mean, that's the reason. Obviously, you wait to see what the schedule is. So there's Sunday night, so that's obviously the biggest game of the week. I wish it was not saying these two teams are like bad or anything or not exciting, but I wish it was like maybe two like more exciting teams. No, I love Herbert and everything, but the Chargers are so dysfunctional in so many different ways. Honestly, their defense is so bad at sometimes. Then the Raiders, like they look like one of the worst teams in the NFL, and then they look like one of the better teams. So I wish it was two maybe more consistent teams, but to get to see Herbert in basically his first playoff game, I think it's going to be exciting to see, and we'll see. I mean, Staley's always aggressive, so I wonder if it comes down to a situation like would he go for like a 4th and 5 or something at like the 7 yard line? So would he go for something like that? I'd be curious to see if that would happen.
I would be curious as well. Out of curiosity, out of all the division winners of the AFC, assuming Buffalo wins a division, which one would you want to see the least, and which one would you want to see the most if you're a wild card team? I know it's dependent on matchups, kind of, but in general.
Well, I guess are we putting Tennessee out just because they're the 1 seed, obviously?
No, I mean out of Tennessee, Kansas City, Cincy, and Buffalo. I mean, which one would you want to see the most? Which one would you want to see the least?
I'd say that the team you don't want to see is I would say Kansas City. I mean, just the experience that they have, Mahomes. It's just unless you have an amazing offensive performance or unless Mahomes is making mistakes, you're just probably not winning that game, to be honest. So I guess the only team would I would just pick not pick the Pats, but I'm saying the Pats would maybe be their best matchup just because you're trusting Belichick to come up with the defense, and he's done it in the past. So I guess maybe there. But again, the Chiefs are for sure a team you don't want to see. I mean, unless if Henry's not playing, which again he's supposed to start practicing now, but like if Henry's not playing, like I wouldn't want to see Tennessee, but I'd for sure welcome them in a game because again, is Tannehill going to beat you? Is Deontay Foreman? I know he's had some good games, but like if you can just shut that running down game a little bit, like Tannehill is going to have to beat you, and I don't think he can. So I would for sure say Tennessee is probably the most favorable team that you'd want to play out of those division winners.
Over Cincy?
I would say so, only because I mean Burrow, like he's clearly a special quarterback, and I think I'd take the special quarterback over the non-special quarterback in Tannehill. So even though Burrow's younger and obviously he's been in the situation Tannehill, has, I would probably still pick Tennessee over Cincy, and who would you want to see?
Would you pick Cincy or Buffalo? Who would you rather see?
Cincy, because I think Allen's better than Burrow, and again the experience also, and I probably would think that team's better, especially if they have Allen running the ball, which there's no reason to ever run it with Singletary. He sucks, but if Allen's running the ball and he can do that effectively, and again he's amazing in the air, anyways, that offense, that's when they get to almost like a Chiefs level of offense because it's hard to stop that offense when Allen's running downhill, read options, and then throwing to Diggs and Davis and Knox and Beasley on the outside. It's hard to stop that offense when they have it rolling.
Yeah, I think in general, I would want to see. I think I'd want to see Tennessee the most. I mean, technically, you can't see them in round one, so my ideal path would probably be, to me, seeing Cincy round one. So Cincy round one, then Tennessee round two, then, I mean, who knows what happens in the conference championship? It's probably Kansas City, but maybe you get lucky. Maybe the Chargers can pull off the round one upset. That would be insane if they could. I would be so if somehow the Chiefs, were to get upset by the Chargers and the Patriots were to not make the Super Bowl, I would be very sad. But
with how it stands, you said Cincy again. You can't face Tennessee, so it'd be Cincy. So that would be the Colts. I mean, like I said, I think that's a good matchup for the Bengals. But would you pick the Colts in that game? I mean, it's definitely one of the more even matchups. I would say.
I wouldn't. I would pick Cincy. And I've been a Colts guy the whole year, but I have not seen the growth out of Wentz that I wanted to see. Or maybe, the return to form. I personally thought that we would need to see that in the regular season. And and definitely the playoffs. And I don't think we've seen it. I mean, I knew this Colts team was going to be good even after starting like 1-3 or whatever, 1-4. But, I envisioned it a little bit differently. Maybe Taylor not having an MVP type season, but still really good. And then hopefully I was assuming or hoping Wentz would be, a top 14 guy who's pretty consistent. And on his best day can be, a top 8 guy. Maybe get close to Dak, but we have not seen anything like that at all. So I would go with Cincy. I mean, I think they're hot right now. I think they're one of the hotter teams in the conference. And Burrow Chase is a matchup that I'm not sure the Colts really have, the answer for. So.
And even besides Chase, I mean, Higgins and Boyd are like I mean, they're not like great receivers, but I mean, they're pretty good complementary receivers to Chase. I think they're all 1,000 yards. I think Boyd needs like a 100-yard game this last week to get 1,000 yards, but they're basically all 1,000-yard receivers. And then Mixon, I mean, like he's a top 5 running back in the league right now. So I mean, yeah, for sure. I think that would be that'd probably be one of the better matchups, just because if the Colts get out early, then you'd see the best of the Bengals and then the best of the Colts. But yeah, I mean, the matchups in the AFC are definitely looking really good. And I think if the Chargers get that 7 seed, and let's say it's the Chiefs there, that 2 seed, I think every matchup, whether it be Chiefs, Chargers, Bills, Patriots, and then Bengals, Colts, I think those are all like insane matchups to have for the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, those are some good matchups. And the NFC, I mean, I still think there's a lot of good matchups in the NFC. Maybe the AFC's matchups are slightly more appealing, but I think the NFC matchups are very good as well. So yeah.
But I mean, another team I just wanted to mention, not more so is concerning, and I think you'd probably agree, but the Rams, I mean, Stafford the last couple of weeks now, maybe, I mean, he definitely goes through his ups and downs, so maybe he's at his down, and then when the playoffs start, he goes back up. But I mean, for them to, I mean, barely beat the Ravens last week was concerning. He didn't look good at all. He has those Stafford interceptions again. They barely had to pull that one out. They kind of, again, the Huntley just couldn't bring that team to victory, which you're not really expecting him to. But it's just, again, right now they face Philadelphia, and it could be New Orleans or whatever if they're still the 2 seed. But I don't really have any confidence in them past the first round, where, right now they have to play Tampa. And even with Tampa's problems, I'd probably go Tampa, honestly. I think Tampa's probably the better team. And obviously I trust Brady more than Stafford as well. So, I mean, are you concerned about the Rams at all?
I don't know if I'm concerned necessarily. I still think they're a good team, and when the time comes when we do make our predictions, I could very well see myself picking them to make the Super Bowl or win it or whatever. But I think the concerns about Stafford are very legitimate. I mean, Stafford's one of those guys that, because he was on a really bad team, probably the worst organization in the NFL, he was a guy that when we talked about who's the most overrated or who's the most underrated quarterback, Stafford was very often in that list because, Brady
Yeah.
can't be overrated, underrated. Rodgers really can't be overrated, underrated necessarily. But, there's that gray area with Stafford when he was on a bad team. My conclusion on this is he was probably the most properly rated quarterback. Some people say, wow, he's so overrated because, people say that he should, he's a top 5 guy if he's on a better team, when in reality he's probably not, because even, top 5 guys should bring a bad team, to new heights. And a
Yeah.
lot of people would also say, wow, he's super underrated because he doesn't get the same recognition because he puts up all these stats and is the fastest guy to X amount of yards and X amount of touchdowns or whatever. But I think he's the most properly rated quarterback, or, maybe not the most, but I think he was properly rated in hindsight because he's a guy that's on his good days, a top 8 or 9 quarterback who makes some really good plays, but on his bad days is probably like that 14th or 15th best quarterback who just makes some questionable throws. And we've kind of seen the same thing and a much better franchise, which is he does it really well in some of these easier games. He mops teams up, but there are times when he really struggles hard. And I'm not even going to say that Ravens defense is a good defense, because it's really not, with the amount of injuries they've had. He should not be struggling against that team. I think the rating of him anywhere between the 8th or 9th best quarterback to the 12th or 13th throughout his career is pretty much, I think, valid at this point. I would say he's probably in that range, depending on how much you like him. But I don't think he should be anything above necessarily like 7 or 8, and I don't think he should be below anything past 13 or 14. So.
Yeah, and look, if you do that trade again, to look back at that trade for Golf Stafford, you do it a million times out of a million, because it gives you a better chance. Even though Stafford may not be the top 5 guy you maybe expected when he goes into a McVay offense with Cup, and then you get Odell and everything. But you do that trade a million out of a million times, because he's going to be here for the next probably 3 or 4 years, I would say. At least, competing at this type of level. He's only 33, I think he is 34. So he still has a couple more years left, obviously, with the way the quarterbacks play. He could play till he's 40. But you for sure do the trade again. But, they're all in on this team winning a Super Bowl. And I don't know. I mean, it relies a lot on his shoulders, and is he really a Super Bowl winning quarterback? It's not, he's not a quarterback on a team that's going to win a Super Bowl. Is he a quarterback that's going to win a Super Bowl for his team? I don't know. I don't think he is. And they don't really have much room to upgrade. The salary cap isn't great. They have no first round picks, obviously, until I think 2024, I think it is. So it's going to be tough for them to improve, especially if Stafford isn't that guy, which, like I said, in my mind, I don't think he is that guy. So they're either a lucky road, or the defense is just like insane, or like someone, like something else happens that, helps them to get to a Super Bowl and then obviously win a Super Bowl.
Even with the injury of Robert Woods, I would probably go ahead and say this is their best opportunity to win it. Tampa Bay is really injured. Green Bay, while is a very good team, is not necessarily a special great team or anything. They're not, I don't know. They're not maybe what the run that the last year's Bucks went on. I don't think they're anything crazy, all time. Stafford, probably not getting any better. Donald is obviously still great, but if he's in his prime or maybe slightly out of it, he's not getting any better probably. Same with Ramsey. I don't know if he's getting any better. I don't see any reason that this team would get significantly better. So what I'm thinking is, best case, these guys stay the exact same. The only thing you'd be able to net gain would be the return of Robert Woods. Maybe. But odds are you're probably seeing the decline of a couple other guys as you kind of get into the next 2 or 3 years. So I really think it's going to be tough because you've traded so much to get here. The Rams have, but to not really. I don't know. It's going to be tough. You got to compete against. Depending on where Rodgers goes next year, it's going to be very tough for this team to do much. I think, and especially in the NFC West.
And maybe that's the thing. Maybe they're banking on Rodgers may go after this year. Brady, even though he's still great, at some point he's gonna have to show his age, and maybe an injury happens. Maybe they're just not as good as they have been the last 2 years. You look at Dallas. They're talented, but it's always been the same issue. Arizona, they have Murray, but they have Kingsbury as their head coach. So maybe they're just banking on maybe in a year or two while we still have our team, and maybe we can still win this year. But in the next year or two, things might look a lot different in the NFC. Now, usually that means another team will come up. But honestly, if you look at the other teams in the NFC, there's not another team right now that's on the come up that has a great quarterback. So you're kind of in a good spot. But again, if Rodgers stays or Brady looks great for another 2 years, then you're probably still that third team. So they're probably relying on other things happening that will further their chance to win a Super Bowl in my mind.
Yeah, I don't know if they're banking on it necessarily, but if they were in the North, the NFC North, or the NFC South, I think that'd be a much more legitimate argument. But Russell Wilson may not stay, but the Seahawks historically have been a good franchise. The 49ers, say you want about Lance, but I think that's still going to be a really good team. I still think that's going to be one of the best divisions, if not the best division, for the next 3 or 4 years. So I don't know if I can realistically say that the Rams are banking on the fact that, in the next 2 years that they're going to have a wide open NFC. I don't know if I buy that, but I would say that the NFC is probably not going to get any stronger than it is right now. Probably. Especially if Wilson leaves and Rodgers to the AFC, which would be crazy. I hope that doesn't happen because, I'm an AFC fan or a Patriots fan who's in the AFC. So
yeah. But like I said, we'll see. Maybe not banking was the correct word, but at least hopeful towards that.
Sure, hopeful. Yeah. I think is a better word.
But we haven't really talked about games in particular, but we've kind of touched about playoff scenarios anyways. Most of the games this week weren't amazing. I guess the Rams game was close. Obviously, we talked about the Chiefs game. That was, I would agree, that was the best game of the week. Raiders game was a good week as well, or good game. But you had Patriots. I don't know if you're going to make an episode on there or not, because it was a boring game most likely, but they blew out the Jags. Bills, they got close with the Falcons, but they did win. You were probably at least you were probably getting excited towards some point in that game because they were blowing. It looked like it was going to be a 40-point blowout, which is kind of why I bet on the Bills because, like I said, it was even snowing too. So, snow, Falcons going up there, Matt Ryan, just everything. But they wwere winning, I think it was 15-13 or 15-12 or something like that.
15-14.
15-14. It was a lot closer than the Bills would have liked. And again, like I said, you probably were pretty happy knowing that you guys were killing the Jaguars and the Bills maybe could have lost to the Falcons.
Had they lost, I would have been very happy. Unfortunately, it's not the case. But, yeah, even though the Jaguars-Patriots game, there's still a lot of talk about the Patriots because there's a lot of seeding stuff, just like pretty much most teams at this point, other than, the Packers, pretty much. So,
yeah.
I will say this is a blowout, and I'm not going to talk about it much, but I picked the Titans to win by 3.5 or more than 3.5 against the Dolphins, and I wouldn't have picked a 34-3 blowout. But I'm just gonna say I'm not surprised it was a 34-3 blowout. The Dolphins are bad. I don't care what anybody says. They're not a good
Yeah.
team. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that, really. But offense, not special. Defense, not special. Not a lot of talent on that team. I mean, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Parker, and the list kind of almost stops there. I mean, Xavier Howard at one point would have been considered a good cornerback. I've always thought he's overrated, anyways, but yeah, I mean, they really don't have much going for them. I'm not surprised that Tennessee beat them by 31, even without a Henry and without a, you know, Julio. But
Yeah, and I saw a couple more reports, and again, I agree with the Dolphins thing. I mean, there's 7 wins. Again, 6 of them were against awful teams. The one good win was the Ravens win, when they were still, a good team and stuff. But yeah, I wouldn't expect a 34-3, but for sure, definitely a pretty sizable win. But I keep seeing reports again today. I think it was where Deshaun Watson to the Dolphins. I mean, I think he's going to get traded, and I think the Dolphins are just dumb not to try and get him because their defense isn't special for sure, but it's good. It's definitely good. I think they have a pretty good head coach. I think you would agree. Obviously, came from the Patriots. I think he's a good head coach. So if you get Watson in there, like I said, I think he's a top 7 quarterback and arguably top 5 quarterback when he's like playing and everything. You get him with that offense where maybe you can sign someone again. Waddle probably gets elevated. Gesicki, he's obviously a pretty good tight end. You still have Parker. He hasn't had a great year this year, but I kind of blame that on Tua, to be honest. Like, you get a top 5 quarterback in that offense, it elevates the offense. It elevates the defense. The defense doesn't have to go out and try to make every single play, and the offense is out there for a 3 and out, and then the defense is right back out there. That's not going to happen with Watson. So I think the Dolphins are dumb not to try to get Watson this offseason because if you want a real chance to win, and again, you don't even have your first round pick this year, you just got to try and get him because, again, he's a top 5 quarterback who's 26, 25. So, like, why would you not want to get him? And again, I know he has the issues and everything, but if that's all cleared and everything, or maybe he misses a couple games, like, he's worth 14 games, 13 games than Tua is for 17 games. There's no question. So I think they're dumb not to try and get him this offseason.
yeah, I mean, we have to see how everything unfolds. He's got multiple off the field issues. On the field issues, I still think are kind of a thing. I'm not going to say he's injury prone, but and I'm not. I think there's still a range as to how good Watson really is, and obviously the trade package is an issue too. Like, I don't want to give up 4 first rounders. Not saying I wouldn't, but I'm just obviously I don't. I'd have to think about it. I don't know. I don't think it's like you should 100% get him for whatever it takes type of thing. But yeah, I don't know if Tua is the answer. I would be willing to say that at this point. Tua, I don't think he looks good. So, but
Yeah, only because, like, again, Tua, his contract's gonna be coming up at some point. I mean, there's just no way you can even pay him a contract. So, like, he's not going to be back on this team for a second contract. So I just don't like. I don't see a better option. Like, again, you have your first round pick this year. Like, are you really like, even if he's your quarterback, you're still not like a bottom team where you're picking top 5. Like in a draft with a quarterback draft. So to me, I think, again, you have to fight whatever happens with Watson off the field. On the field, I don't really agree with the injury prone. Now, maybe he gets nicked up and banged up, but I mean, the last full season he played every single game with the worst offensive line in history, one of the worst. So I just think that, again, he's under contract as well for a couple more years. In my mind, like, if I was a Dolphins fan, like, I would just want Watson at this point. You're not going anywhere with Tua, and he at least gives you a shot. And again, in my mind, he's a top 5 quarterback. If you want to say top 7, that's fine, but he's a top 5 quarterback.
yeah, again, my only concern is the Rams gave up like what? I mean, 2 firsts for Ramsey and a bunch of other picks for a bunch of other players, and that team was much better than this Dolphins team. And you're kind of at that spot where you're like, yeah, I mean, you're a Super Bowl contender, but you're not a favorite, and you have no future, right? This Dolphins team, you're going to trade for Watson, who's probably in his prime right now, I guess you could say age-wise, which is fine. You're going to have him for a while, probably. But, I mean, you have Watson, you have, Parker, Waddle, Gesicki, and then, I'm not sure you have anything else other than that, like, as far as, like, for sure next 5+ years type of deal. So I don't know. You kind of get to the point where you're like, I just traded 4 firsts and Tua for Watson. Cool. We're going to contend for the division. We're going to be a fun team, but realistically, we don't have the talent to win the Super Bowl, and we all don't have the picks to build on that. We have to, go on a Legion of Boom type run, which is like we're hitting on like 3 fourth rounders, and all those fourth rounders turn out to be like all pro players. That's very tough. That's miracle type stuff. So I'm not saying I wouldn't trade for Watson. I'm just saying I don't know if it's a no-brainer, because if I was a Dolphins fan and traded 4 firsts for Watson, I'm not sure I'm even the favorite for getting second in the division. So to trade 4 first rounders, not even be favorite for second in your division, that's a tough sell, I think.
Yeah, again, potentially, but I also view it as you build your team through the draft, not through the first round, but through the second round, third round, fourth round. Even if your fourth round, third round guys aren't, Pro Bowlers, all pro guys, as long as they're starters and, a starting safety here, a linebacker here, a corner there, and they're solid, like that's what builds your team. And, that's trust in your front office and your scouting, which you should have trust there. But as long as you do, and you can trade those first round picks, again, a first round pick, like you look at through the history, a lot of them are good, a lot of them are bad. And it's really from the second, third round where you get most of your key guys. If you look at almost every NFL team, it's the second and third round. So unless you don't have trust in your front office and your drafting ability, then I could see it. But at the same time, and again, the division's tough. Allen's going to be there for 10 plus years. Jones, it looks like he's obviously going to be there for a long time as well. But and then Wilson, we'll see what happens there. But at some point, you got to give yourself a chance. They haven't, the last 20 plus years, they haven't given themselves a chance. I feel like this is maybe not the best time, but I think it's close enough to the best time to make a trade like this for a team, like I said, that hasn't had a quarterback since Dan Marino. I mean, that's the last time they had a relevant quarterback was Dan Marino's, and that's 30 plus years ago. So, it's definitely time to at least try and get a quarterback at this point, in my mind.
Sure, I think it's time to try, but yeah. Other than that, though, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. We talked about Week 17, talked about AB. Appreciate everybody who stayed to the end of the podcast. If you want to check out,
do we want to do the records or no? The predictions or no?
I was hoping that maybe we just forget about it and move on with our lives, but yeah, I mean, I guess we should probably bring up the records.
I don't want to be like bring it up and stuff, but it's a weekly obligation.
No, you're right. We have to.
I already updated my record. I'm 51, 33, and 1. So, I mean, like I said, if you actually chose my bets every single week, you'd be so in the green or in the black, I guess. But yeah, you'd be making a lot of money.
I went 2 and 3 this week. I want to say you'd have to made me want to double check me on that, but hit on the Titans, missed on the Rams, hit on Atlanta, missed on Indy, missed on Dallas. So 2 and 3, which brings my record up to 44, 39, and 2.
That would be 7 wins back in the win column. So
yeah. So that's game. That is. I'll have to double check it. I mean, I guess triple check it. I do want to triple check to make sure. Is it because I'm losing? Maybe I can just hope that like I messed up somewhere. But yeah, unless I miscalculated by over 2 games and I go perfect this week and you miss every single game, then yeah, it's it's not looking good for me. I guess we'll kind of have to come up with some like parameters about what specifically. I mean, I think it's me just gonna the presentation is going to be your good takes and my bad takes, and pretty much why you've just had a better time as the co-host of the podcast or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds fun.
That's pretty much it. So, I'm actually gonna have to like do research though, because I need to come up with what takes that you've had that are really good, because they're just far and few between. But
yeah, I can't like think of like one. Like, I mean, I'm just not really thinking, but like I know for sure one of your bad ones, and it's one that we've always brought up, but it's the Darnold Jackson one. But I'm hoping to see that one on the presentation.
No, that has to be on there. That has to be like first thing on the board is week 1 after the Cardinal or after Panthers get 1 win. Drew says you'd rather have Sam Darnold over Lamar Jackson. Now listen, is the take wrong? Yes, but is the principle of the take wrong? I mean, we have yet to find out. The principle was that I don't think Lamar Jackson is a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and even if Darnold is a bust, I think he has more potential to be that Super Bowl winning quarterback. Regardless, it's a bad take. I need to just accept it and move on. I don't know. I'll have to actually skim through some videos though, because I mean you've had good takes. I have to think of them. So
Yeah, yeah. So that'll be coming at some point. I mean, it doesn't have to be sometime soon, but at some point before next month or so or something like that.
yeah,
It's probably after the Super Bowl or before.
Yeah, probably between the division rounds and like a week after the Super Bowl. So
I mean, do we want to wait till the Super Bowl is over? I mean, maybe something happens.
Oh yeah, maybe we probably should do that. Maybe we so then if you do, predict a perfect bracket, that's like in the presentation. And if I predict, the team to win the Super Bowl and they lose in the first round, that'd be in that too. So
all right. So yeah, at some point, but after Super Bowls, I think March or February 7th or 13th, I think it is. It's like so far back now, but yeah, some point after that to I don't know March, whatever, in that month.
Span, yeah, probably around mid-February.
Yeah,
you'll see that, and that'll be a cool episode. But other than that, appreciate everybody stayed to the end. Clips channels in the description. I'll be coming out with the Patriots episode this week, talking about seeding, pretty much. So yeah, we'll be back on this channel probably in the next few days, probably either Thursday or Friday. We'll get into week 18. A lot of games there to talk about. We have the playoff game that's, I'm assuming, going to be flexed to Sunday night, which is Raiders-Chargers. That's essentially a playoff game. It's Sunday night. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
That's going to be fun.
And
but yeah,
we have 2 Saturday games also.
Saturday games.
Which is new this year, obviously, with the week 18. I don't know how much I like that, but I guess we'll see. But it's really just for teams on Sunday. It just makes them have to play if, the teams on Saturday win. That's basically the whole point of it. But
I mean, I think for the most part, when you have more days of football, aka like Chiefs Broncos is. I just dropped my mic. Anyways, Chiefs Broncos Saturday 4:30. Let's just say that was the 1:00 window on Sunday. I'm probably watching that on Red Zone, which is like, you're still watching a good bit of the game, but you're not watching all the game. The fact that it's on Saturday at 4:30 means I get to watch all the game. So I think that helps. Now I wouldn't put football Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I mean I don't have a problem with it. We'll see how it works out. But anyways, goodbye.